You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, in Disney.
Well, here we go. Another rockin' awesome Saturday night. And we have Anne Marie. She's a former Jehovah's Witness, and she's coming out of Northern California. And Anne Marie is quite the gal. She really loves exposing the Watchtower. She's been doing it for a number of years on the Six Screens Network, and we're so glad to have her part of it. Now, tonight, Anne Marie will tell you what she's going to be talking about. So let's bring Anne Marie in. Hello, Anne Marie.
Hello, my brother Rick. How's everything going over there in the apostate capital of the world?
Well, it certainly is nice. I mean, that is a title that we're proud of up here. Yeah, we do have a lot of apostates, and more people are leaving. And Maria, and, I get people writing me quite a bit. Rick, I wish we were the apostate capital of the world. I'm jealous. Well, don't you worry. There's going to be plenty of apostates coming your way. The way the Watchtower is acting lately, man, it's even surprising they have anybody else attending the Kingdom Halls. It's crazy.
Yeah, but you know what? Crazy is good when it comes to Watchtower because their facade is fading fast.
It sure is, Anne Marie. And, I cover the news. That's what I do. I look at their site. I look all over the internet all week long, trying to come up with the top stories of the week. And man, there's more of them. I can't even give all the stories anymore on a Saturday night. I used to scrounge around 15, 16 years ago. It was hard to find critical news, but that's all you find is critical news about the Watchtower.
Well, you know what it says, even in the New World Translation. I think it's at Luke 8:17, where it says, there is nothing hidden that will not become known, or anything carefully concealed that will never become known and not come out in the open, or something like that. Oh, that's a promise. And you know what the witnesses always told us when we were in Watchtower? God is not one to be mocked. For whatever a man is sowing, this he will also reap. I think it's time the Watchtower is beginning to reap their deception and their nastiness and their evil schemes, while they smile and talk about how godly and loving and spiritual they are. Thank you, Rick.
Well, that's exactly right. But I'll tell you something, and I'm looking forward to your program as well as the other programs coming on tonight. But this week, of course, we know that Serena Williams became a baptized witness. That happened last Saturday down in Palm Springs, Florida, and she got baptized in their assembly hall. And I got the pictures. You've seen the pictures all over the internet. But, I've got my own feelings on Serena. And we'll be talking about that tonight. And I might cut her a little bit of slack, but we'll see how the audience feels about the whole thing. So what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Well, you and I talked earlier, and in the back of my mind, it's always kind of bothered me every time it comes up, is how the Watchtower treats the older members when they can't get any more use out of them as far as making them look good, like pioneering and studies and meeting attendance. When they get older, it's like, well, they're going to die. What can we get out of them before it's too late and they kick the bucket? And I have heard more stories, sobbing stories, some people actually crying, of how basically Watchtower not only goads and manipulates and guilts the older ones to, how they use the word encourage. They encourage the older ones to sign over their property, to sign over their house, to sign over their bank accounts, to give the witnesses power of attorney. There was a big movement on not too long ago on the internet where they were trying to get a couple thousand or a few thousand signatures to basically try to present some type of lawsuit or something against Watchtower, because this is something they've been doing systematically toward the older ones for years. And one guy who signed it, the post where you could sign up on this petition gave you the option to explain why you're signing this petition. And this one gentleman said, I was never a Jehovah's Witness, but I'm signing this for my grandmother who was coerced into signing away everything she had. And he said they put her in a nursing home, visited her 2 or 3 times, and then abandoned her and they took everything. And we've heard these stories many times. And I remember somebody coming on your show many years ago, and this was somebody who was commenting on the show, and she was saying how she and her brothers and sisters and all her cousins were not in Watchtower. I guess some of them were, but their grandmother was a devout Jehovah's Witness. She had a huge, beautiful house on beautiful property. And she was saying that, my brothers and sisters and all my cousins, we always hung out at our grandmother's house. She was good to us. She fed us. We were happy. But when she died, she had signed everything she owned to Watchtower. And she said she remembered being on the lawn when all of the trucks and the vans from the Watchtower drove up. And she said they were told that they could go in and they had 20 minutes to gather maybe some dishes or clothing or blankets. And the man who told them they had 20 minutes had a list of things that they couldn't take, certain types of jewelry, paintings, other things of value. And she said they went in the house and they had only 20 minutes. They were told to get out. And she said she remembered they were all standing on the lawn holding what articles of clothing and blankets or whatever they were allowed to have. And she said they were all crying, watching the people from Watchtower just go in and haul out everything. And then they sold off their grandmother's house. And that was a heartbreaking thing to hear. Thank you, Rick.
Well, it is a heartbreaking thing to hear, but we hear it. It's not anything that's totally unusual. We hear it a lot. I've had in the last 16 years doing this program, numerous people call into the program and how upset they were that as their parents and relatives who were getting older were being pushed by the Watchtower to give them the money, give them their property, give them their jewelry. And of course, our man, Johnny the Bethelite, he even talked about it, and he knew his sister up there in upstate New York that he was very close to. She was an older lady, but it was like his grandmother, and he even looked at her like she was his grandmother, and she died and she left everything to the Watchtower. And they have, trailer trucks where they ship their goods around and what have you, and they sent the trailer trucks up to the woman's house and basically was unloading, out of her house, everything she had, her jewelry. Johnny got up there ahead of time. He felt kind of awkward doing it, but he took her wedding ring that he didn't think the Watchtower deserved because they would just cash it in for the gold. But this happens. We hear this a lot, and even more so as of late. There's more and more people. In fact, I was just reading online today in one of the forums how people are so upset that their parents, as of late, are getting older and leaving all their money to the Watchtower. And even in one particular case I was reading today, the man was leaving his money to the Watchtower, and he had 3 or 4 children, and 3 of the children were not witnesses any longer. So he's leaving all his money to the Watchtower and the witness child. How unfair it is, and how the Watchtower does this is really appalling to take advantage of the situation. And we had a man, I couldn't get a hold of him, but his name is Jay. He had a program on here called Watchtower in Behind Closed Doors. And Jay told us numerous times how he was swindled out of his father's money, $350,000, how the Watchtower swindled his father out of it before he died and left Jay basically penniless. Jay's in a nursing home today and still talks about how evil the Watchtower is. So it's nothing unusual, Anne-Marie, nothing unusual.
Yeah, it's sadly not unusual. And my brothers were taken in by a Jehovah's Witness couple when we were kids. I just left home and was on my own. But now the husband has died, but they bought a beautiful 4-bedroom home in Fresno, California, with a pool and everything about maybe 20 years ago. And my brother continued to stay with them long after he was grown and continued giving his paycheck, almost all of it, to this couple that had taken him in. And now the husband died. The the husband was an elder. He died, and now the wife, she's in her late 80s, and she has dementia. And I could just smell the witnesses circling because they want that house. They want that property because the property has more than tripled in value. And I can't help but wonder what's going to happen to my brother. I just can smell the greed. It's almost like they make sure that I bet they keep track of all of the properties that different witnesses have, so they can move in. They like to know everything ahead of time so they can plan their means of attack. Of course, they do it with love, Christian love, right? And it's just so heartbreaking. But anyway, what made me think of it this week was I saw one of my doctors, and I noticed he seemed particularly stressed. And I asked him, thank God I have doctors that actually talk to me. And he admitted that this had been a very particularly stressful week. And I'm like, what's going on? And he said, well, I have this patient, and she's in her late 80s. And he said, I got a phone call from this lady I've never talked to asking me how much steroids to give her, and she had just gotten out of the hospital. And he said he didn't even know she had been in the hospital. Nobody notified him. And he looked at me and he said, I didn't know. He said, I didn't even know she was a Jehovah's Witness. And I just went, oh my God. I thought my heart was going to stop. And I put my head in my hands and I went, oh no, oh no. All of a sudden I just pictured what had happened for a doctor who is caring for a patient to not be notified that his very old, elderly, fragile health patient is in the hospital and not be notified means to me that the witnesses have been basically given carte blanche when it comes to her health care. These witnesses, from what he said, are quote unquote taking care of her. And he says, I guess I need to go see her. You know how doctors are nowadays. They don't make house calls, but he's very concerned. And I'm like, oh my God, can I go with you? And he's like, why? And I go, this is not good. I don't like this. And I told him why. I said, do you know what Jehovah's Witness organization does to older people? And he looked at me and he said, oh my God, I said, does she have a nice house? He said, yes. And her property is beautiful. It's like out there somewhere. So the way he looked, it was like she had maybe 1 or 2 or 3 acres of beautiful land. And he looked really worried. And he says, I don't want to get in the middle of anything. Maybe I shouldn't go. And I go, no, please go. Can you find out if she's given away her power of attorney? That's what I'm scared of. If they're being nice to her, I'm thinking maybe she hasn't signed over her power of attorney yet. Because you know what happens if you give them power of attorney, once they have control of all your stuff, it's not long before you're in a nursing home and everything you know is gone. So anyway, that's why I called you and was kind of upset and talking to you about it because I'm so worried. And he even asked me, he goes, well, what should I do? And I said, you ask her if she's open to maybe having an advocate for her health and her general welfare who is neutral, it's not about religion or anything, just somebody who's looking after her welfare. And he said, well, should I call a social worker? And I go, that would probably be a really good idea. So I didn't push it, but I did tell him, this is what happens in the Watchtower organization. It's almost like they're vultures, Rick. I just picture vultures circling over the older ones that have something that they can benefit from. I mean, if they're going to go after little kids for their ice cream money and guilt them out of their allowance and push people to sign away, on paper, they even have forms. We know this is true, right, Rick? Don't they have forms? Like, before you kick the bucket or lose your mind, make sure you sign everything over to us. I mean, you've heard of those forms,
they have what they call the giving desk at the Watchtower, and it's always predominantly seen right around Christmas time on jw.org, and it was always in the magazines around Christmas time too. It's called the Watchtower Giving Desk, and witnesses would be able to, get a form and fill out what they want to give to the Watchtower. Now you can give anything to the Watchtower. You can give him your house, give him your jewelry, give your insurance policies. even rewards that you get from your credit card. They'll take that. They'll take anything of value. They'll take unhesitatingly. So yeah, they actually do have a regular, they call it the giving desk, and they have brothers that are responsible for trying to squeeze as much money out of the witnesses as they possibly can.
It just breaks my heart. I mean, even my poor mother, who lives in I don't know, it's some kind of a subsidized housing thing. She has a studio. My 91-year-old mother lives in a little studio in a not a good part of town, and she has been faithfully sending $30, $40, $50, $60 every single month out of her Social Security check, because she really has no bills. So she sends everything she can, and she's been faithfully sending money, I don't know, 30, 40 years. And here's somebody who doesn't have anything to give, but she's been giving. And I told my husband the other day, I said, I can't even imagine how many thousands of dollars that my mother has given just by herself with her little checkbook, pulling off of her Social Security check. That is it's upsetting.
Oh, it is
I'm
upsetting.
sorry, I'm really upset
No,
about this whole thing.
it's very upsetting, Anne Marie. Right now, the world is not, the America and the whole world is undergoing inflationary problems. A lot of people, really more people than you'd even think, are having all kinds of trouble with finances. But nonetheless, the Watchtower is continuing, even in this time of turmoil. More money, more money, more money. You'd think they'd let up. You think if they were really a Christian organization, that they would say, hey, look we appreciate what you can do, but it's hard right now. Let's just let it go. But no, they'll never say anything like that. In fact, I'm even disappointed with many Christian organizations too, that are constantly asking for money from the poor people. Constantly. They're taking advantage of godliness and squeezing the people to give them all their money. It's terrible.
Yeah, I just thought of, they're supposed to be true Christian. They put down Christians, but they're supposed to be true Christians, which translate into we're better than. But you would think that they would at least encourage you to make sure, you count your finances, you're taking care of your family first. I have never heard them even hint towards something like that. It's how much more can you do for Jehovah? Honor Jehovah with your valuable things. My goodness, it's just so unreal. And you mentioned to me, Rick, I haven't been on Reddit in quite some time. You mentioned to me that you had actually seen some posts in regard to this matter. Can you share some of those experiences?
Well, there's a number of posts in there as of late on how ex-witness children, of course, they're the ones that would be concerned. If you were Jehovah's Witness child, or even a grown-up child, and your parents were staunch Jehovah's Witnesses, you probably wouldn't have too much trouble at all showing in the will that they're giving everything to the Watchtower. It wouldn't bother you one bit because you're a witness too. But who is really bothering is the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, that their mother and father in their will is leaving all their money to the Watchtower. And this ticks them off. It really does. I mean, if you're a witness, you don't really see through it, but you can just see this multi-billion-dollar organization trying to get as much money, greedy as they possibly can be, trying to get as much money out of the older witnesses as possible. Now, I don't know if anybody knows it or not, but we did have a woman on the program here, I'd say about 8-10 years ago. And I can remember she wanted to tell her story on how the Watchtower really scammed her and her family. And I'll tell you what it was up there at Wallkill, New York. It's a beautiful area. If nobody's ever been out there, I have to tell you, it's one of the more pristine places you'd want to see in the whole northeastern part of the United States. It's beautiful. And the mother and father owned the land that the Watchtower farm was built on, the Watchtower Wallkill project. And what it was it was a beautiful farmhouse they had, and they had acres and acres. I think it was 150 acres of land from what I can remember. And how the mother and father wanted to give the land to the Watchtower. And so they went to the Watchtower and said, they were Jehovah's Witnesses, we'll give you all this land, but we want to keep our house here on the land. They said, oh, no problem. I mean, it shouldn't be any problem. So they left their little farmhouse on the land. It's still there to this day, from what I understand. And the woman, the daughter, she no longer is one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but she was so upset. And she just lives a life today of ordinary means and like everybody else, scrounging along. And she could have been a multi-millionaire. But her mother and father figured it would be proper to leave all their property to Jehovah. So, you hear these stories and they're not being made up. And hundreds of thousands of dollars a week flow into the Watchtower from property being taken over by them. It's a crying shame. And Anne-Marie, I can even understand why it bring tears to your eyes with your mother. That is so pitiful that they do that to her.
Yeah. And when my grandmother died, when my grandfather was a builder and a contractor in Hawaii, and he owned a lot of pristine property. And when he sold it all in 1959, he was a millionaire. And back in 1959, he thought he and my grandmother were set for life. Unfortunately, you know how it works. Well, she only had, maybe little more than $250,000 left when she died. And she left a lot of that money to my mother. And I never had the nerve to ask my mother how much she gave of that. Not just her Social Security check, but I am pretty darn sure they got a chunk of change from that, because she certainly never gave any to me. Think about that. But what's really sad is what you mentioned about the children of these older people that give their property to Watchtower. A lot of these kids who are no longer in Watchtower have been taking care of their Jehovah's Witness parents, because the Jehovah's Witness kids who are still in the organization are quote unquote too busy. I have heard that story many times, because they not only have to work and do whatever, but they have to get in their time, and they don't have time to take care of their aging Jehovah's Witness parents. And I have heard from many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have spent years taking care of their aging Jehovah's Witness parents, not only taking care of them physically, but asking their Jehovah's Witness siblings, please, can you help? We don't have time. We don't have time. Oh, we'll drop by next week. Well, you're closer. What's really sad is I have heard from several of these over the years that they have paid not only their parents' bills, but kept up with the mortgage payments, because their Social Security check or whatever wasn't enough, and maybe, the medical bills had wiped them out. Many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have helped take care of their aging Jehovah's Witness parents and paid their bills and kept up the mortgage, and the parents still signed everything away to the Watchtower. So the Watchtower is not only benefiting off of these poor, misguided Jehovah's Witness aging old people, but the children, they have paid. If they hadn't paid, the Jehovah's Witness parents would have been in a poor people nursing home or something, and it just makes me sick. And I knew this one lady, she took care of her mother for years. And I would, we would be in contact with each other, and it just made me sick. She said she'd have to take her mom to the meetings. Everybody would ignore her. They'd come visit. She'd have to leave the house and go in the garden. And she was paying for everything. And she still had to watch her mother give everything to the Watchtower, while everybody at the Kingdom Hall was shunning her, who was taking care of her poor Jehovah's Witness mother. And none of her brothers and sisters would help because they were too busy. And it's just, one thing the Watchtower doesn't have is shame. They don't seem to have any sense of shame. No guilt, no shame. They use that as tools to manipulate their followers, but they don't have any guilt and they don't have any shame. That's just what I feel.
Well, it's certainly a good, you have reasons to feel that way. And I don't think they have any feelings of guilt either. Why don't you open up the lines, Anne-Marie, and see if you can get some people to come in and talk with you?
That would be nice. I don't know why, but I'm feeling really upset right now. I feel like crying. I feel like yelling. I feel like shaking some people. Anyway, thank you, Rick. Anybody would like to come in? I forgot to welcome everybody. Today is Six Screen Saturday. I'm so happy. It is Saturday, January 14th, 2023. This is Touched by the Tentacles of the Watchtower program, and we are talking about how Watchtower will suck dry all the old people they can for all their property and money and whatever. Anybody want to comment? Star 6?
Hello, Anne-Marie?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Anne. Hey, honey. It's Constance. How you doing today, sweetheart?
I miss you.
Oh, I miss you too, love. I always love when you're on, honey. So I just got back in from grocery shopping, and I'm listening to your topic, and I had to chime in. Just a couple of things, honey, I wanted to say, and it's not to strike a chord with you, but you had brought it up. You know, your mom saying how your mom had inherited, you know, a good chunk of change from someone she knew. I didn't catch who that was. But anyway, if your mom, like a lot of JWs, are on Section 8 housing, that's all based on income eligibility. In other words, their income has to be at a certain level in order to qualify for Section 8 low-income housing. Same thing with food stamps and Medi-Cal and all of that. So
yeah, well, she got all that money way before she ever got into this place. This was way before she ever had any government help.
Okay, honey.
Just
well, okay, love. The reason why I say that is I know someone I won't mention, but anyway, she is on Section 8 housing. She's really pretty much, I would say, a PMO, but her sister is an elderette and brother-in-law is an elder. And when the mother passed first and the father passed away, the home that they sold in the Bay Area was $850,000. This was some time ago. And anyway, it was distributed to the children. And my friend received a portion of that, you know, just a little over 100,000. But the sister, who's an elderette, had to hide that. She had to hide that in her bank account so that it was not in my friend's bank account, and they're fleshly sisters. Because had that been the case, then my friend would have been kicked out to be not eligible for Section 8 housing. So that was one point I wanted to make, honey. The other thing I wanted to say is there's a sister, I won't mention her name, but she's been on here many times before in the past. They're from a large family. She's out of the organization now, and her parents were very wealthy. They had a huge, huge family. I mean, huge, over 10 children. And the father died first, and the mother's up there in years. And anyway, one of this gal who's out of the organization now, her sister is an elderette, married, of course, to an elder. So that couple took the mother in, who's elderly, and of course, taking care of her finances. And the elder, this is not my words, this is from my friend who's been on the show, was basically taking his mother-in-law's, you know, his name was on the bank account. So he was writing all these personal checks and so forth at the mother-in-law's expense. So it was so bad that my friend is gonna, she and some of her family members who are ex-JWs are gonna file a lawsuit. So, you know, honey, when it comes to Watchtower, I don't care if it's an elder, I don't care who it is. When it comes to money, they're a bunch of vultures coming in for the kill, because they don't, for the most part, most of them don't really work for it. They don't have a college degree and they don't have, you know, a career. So when they see money, they go for it at their last chance that they can grab. So it's really, really sad, honey. But your topic is really, really, you know, I hope it resonates with a lot of JWs or even PMOs who are listening. And Rich is here, honey. He wanted to make a comment too. So thank you.
Hey, Anne-Marie.
Oh,
I'm really enjoying the program. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, how are you?
I am wonderful. Could not be better. Life has been great. Couple thoughts. when the Watchtower sold all its property off in Brooklyn, or most of it, they made over $2 billion with a B. Billions, not millions, but billions. There's no accounting to anybody for that except to the very high echelon in the governing body. Nobody seems to know where that money goes or what it's used for. They would like you to believe that that money goes to the worldwide witnessing work, which is a dark hole. Money goes in there and nobody knows how it's being spent. It's not being spent on pioneers for their gasoline. They're not reimbursing them for that, or sending a pioneer to lunch or something. Not a cent for that. But Jeffrey Jackson has a brand new car worth $500,000. It's a Bentley, and that's a documented fact. He also has a car called the Hellcat or a Demon, and that's a car with like 800 horsepower. You don't even use that much horsepower on a drag strip. But anyway, it's such a fraud, such a fraud. And I just want the audience to know, many, many years ago, around 1990, when I was disfellowshipped, I decided to send a $100 check to the Watchtower. And I wrote him a note, told him I was disfellowshipped and nobody came to see me or anything like that. Well, they cashed the check for sure. They did that. And nobody came to see me. All my elders at my Kingdom Hall, they ignored me, even though I was in a lot of distress at the time. So they do not care about people. They care about money. It will always be money first and other, human life second. They think nothing of disfellowshipping someone theoretically that kills their everlasting life for almost nothing. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Loving the show.
Well, thank you so much, Dick. I have missed you and Constance commenting, and I haven't called because I haven't been on Facebook since late August or early September. And that's where Constance's phone number is in my messaging. I just don't want to get on Messenger, and I miss conversing with her because she's very dear to me, and I'm happy you guys are happy. Thank you for your comment so much, Dick. Yeah, I remember somebody else making a kind of a comment along the lines of you, where a disfellowshipped person said that they had gotten some kind of a notice asking if they would be willing to donate, or if they could find their way to donate to the Watchtower. And if I remember correctly, it's pretty much the correct, that they were like, wow, they won't talk to me. They don't come visit me. They don't call me. They don't care if I'm dead or alive, but they want my money. They have the nerve to ask me if I can donate. I mean, what the heck? Maybe out of 200 letters that they send to disfellowship people, and they keep careful records, maybe 20 or 30 of them will send in $10 or $50. You never know. I mean, when you are brokenhearted, you think, well, maybe they'll come see me now, No, it doesn't work that way. I'm sure you guys are familiar with our dear sister Pixie. She always comes up with wonderful, insightful comments. And she has mentioned more than once how her very aged mother was basically being manipulated to try to turn over her house. And she basically said, you're not going to get me to sign over my house. So, I mean, we have these examples everywhere, and I was hoping if anybody out there knows of an example, knows of an experience or a story that you've heard where different ones signed over their home, their savings, their life insurance, their jewelry, a nice painting they have that was worth money, or heard of their parents being gypped out of their house or guilted out of their house. like I said, a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have been the ones who took care of their aging Jehovah's Witness parents who were still faithful to Watchtower and had to see, now that their eyes are open, just how their aging parents were manipulated to give. And it almost seems like you're only valuable to the Watchtower if you're benefiting them. And I'll never forget the one story that stuck out of my head was that guy that signed the petition and said, I'm signing this for my mother, who signed everything away to Watchtower. And they put her in a nursing home, visited her 2-3 times, and then just abandoned her. And he said he was never a Jehovah's Witness, but he saw what they did to his mother. Everything that she and his father had worked for, given to the Watchtower. And that is just one of hundreds of thousands, I'm sure, of cases where Watchtower has benefited from their manipulation and their tactics. Anybody like to comment?
Yeah, Emily,
I have a case.
Let the other caller.
Okay, let's have the lady. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Christine.
Hi, Christine.
I have an experience, a personal experience. It was not a rumor. It's just I experienced it before I woke up from the organization. I was doing some caregiving of a lady whose husband had died. She was older, in her 80s. And as I took care of her, I found out from her telling me that her son is not going to be in her will because he left the organization, but that her daughter stayed in the organization. So now her will is going to be given to her daughter, who's still a witness. And then as I took care of her through the month, one day she told me, well, my son's coming over to do some repairs on my house. And I said, oh, no problem. Because I was one of those weird witnesses who didn't shun her children, and I didn't shun the disfellowship. And I didn't because I had experienced disfellowshipping in my earlier years, and I knew how evil it was, and I didn't believe in it. But anyway, I said, no problem. So her son came over while I was working there, and he did some repairs, and I was courteous to him. I didn't, I said, hello, nice to meet you, this and that. And so here, this is what she told me later. Well, the elders told me I'm not supposed to have my son come over because he's not a witness, that he can't come and help me with my house. So I was just like blown away. Those, that instance really verifies what a powerful control they have, even over the elderly who have need for help. And their own son comes over, and the elders find out, and they told her he can't do that. And she was willing to follow it, being so submissive and older in years, been in the Watchtower for many years. So I didn't say anything while I worked for her, but I just took note at how ridiculous it was. And I was still in the organization. So this is going on in a lot of families where they isolate. I mean, somebody was saying that they'll let the non-JWs or the ex-JWs come in and take care of their parents because they're so busy. But not in this situation. The elders even poked their nose in and was saying that she can't have her own son come in. And he was a very kind man. Looking back on it, it's just ridiculous what they do to hurt families. And, he'll get nothing out of, the inheritance. So anyways, just wanted to share, and thank you. Say hi. Saying hello to everybody. Enjoying the show.
Thank you so much, Christine. We really appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead, dear.
Yeah, with that comment that was just on, maybe the Watchtower forgot that when Moses brought the commandments down from the mountain, that it was etched in stone to honor your father and mother. Sometimes the Watchtower forgets that when money is involved, And just another thing for any JWs that are listening, when they're begging for money for the Meteor Center, $150 million is an estimate that I heard. Remind the Watchtower they got $2 billion from property that they sold in Brooklyn. Thank you, Anne Marie. Good program.
Well, thank you, Dick. Ken, are you still there? Ken, are you still there? I think
Can
Ken
I
wanted
ask
to
Christine
call.
a question?
Oh, of course. Christine, are you still listening? Randy wants to ask you a question. Christine? I'm sure she's listening. Go ahead, dear.
Well, if she is, I just wanted to ask if that sister that she took care of, if her JW daughter ever came by to.
Hi, I'm here. This is Christine. Go ahead.
Christine, I was just curious if you could share if the sister that you took care of, if her JW daughter ever came by regularly to check on her and do things for her.
Yes, I'll have to admit this was a very loving family,
Well,
and
good,
the daughter
'cause,
was very
I've seen
good to her mother.
situations where the ones that were JWs never came by at all, maybe serving at Bethel or whatever, not even calling their moms for 6 months at a time, and the non-JWs were the ones stepping up, taking care of them. And so I just
Yes,
curious
I've
in
heard
that
that.
situation.
No, this was a probably not a normal case, but it was a beautiful family. Her husband, she was a widow. Her husband had died. The daughter was very good to her. I was impressed. They're a very loving family, and her son was very loving too. But here they were trying to cut him out, But they evidently influenced her enough to not even have him in her will. That was very sad circumstance for me to watch.
Well, I appreciate the way that you set the example in talking to him in front of her. We did the same thing before we ever left the organization. We stopped the shunning policy, and that actually emboldened some of our friends to get back with their loved ones again.
Well, one of the only things I'm proud of I've only been out a few years, and I'm in my 60s. One of the things that I can be proud of is that I never accepted the shunning policy, and I didn't shun people. If I ran into a witness or a disfellowship person in the grocery store or in public, I would give them a hug. I would say, I love you, I miss you, and I'm looking forward to you coming back. But I wouldn't shun them. And one person I ran into while I was still in, I gave her money because she was down and out on her. She was down and out and had become homeless, and ran into her in a public arena. And I was so sad for her. I gave her some money. So I guess I just, there might be a few JWs in there like me who didn't practice the shunning, but of course I never advertised that. I never boldly, I didn't verbalize it to anybody, but.
You were still courageous for just doing it, and
I didn't believe that was
that gave
a
other
Christian
people courage
act
too, I bet.
Yeah, as far as calling myself a Christian, if I was to call myself a Christian and do that, I would feel like a hypocrite. So I just didn't follow it. Oh, and then I had 3 sons, and when they all left, I never shunned my kids. And guess what? Because of that, my oldest son, when he woke up, he came to me with the videos of the Australian Royal Commission. And he said, Mom, because I had a nervous breakdown and I didn't know why. And he said, Mom, it's the religion. Then he gave me those tapes and I went, oh, man. So I woke up at a very old age. I really, lost everything. I lost all my friends of many, many years.
Were you raised
and
in?
ended up in 2 divorces. And now I have no husband. I'm all alone. I have worldly family, that don't shun me, but because I stayed away from them so many years, they're not that open-hearted toward me, which is a sad thing because it just went on for so long. And, I did what I could to be close to family, but I didn't put out, the regular stuff that people do, meet for holidays and all that. I wasn't able to overcome. I, for some reason, wasn't able to, I didn't believe in shunning, but I went ahead and followed the isolating myself from the holidays and all of that stuff. And that really hurt my family. And it's not repairable. But, I mean, they don't shun me, but they're not that open-hearted toward me, My sister, who I live with now, sometimes we get into some discussions, and I try to explain to her how powerful the indoctrination was, but then she said to me one day, she goes, well, you still chose it, because normal people don't understand. They're like, well, you still chose to be that way, and I can't say she's wrong, because I did make a choice. But they don't understand that when you are in there, the power of taking your whole mind and your whole mental capacity to think clear, they take it all, and you give it up. Yeah, it's true. You choose to be indoctrinated. But instead of seeing it as a negative when you're in the cult, you actually see it as a positive. You're like, yep, they washed my brain good. Yep, I'm a clean person. Yeah. So they twist your ability, you're able to twist things when people approach you. And so I couldn't argue with my sister. Yeah, I did choose, but I was a teenager, very young, very gullible when I got indoctrinated into the religion. And so I just, I used to feel very guilty for, all of the negativity that happened to me after I came out and during, and I just had to say, well, wait a minute, you can take some responsibility for it, but you do have to admit that there are things that can come into your life and control your mind, and you did let it happen, and it was your choice. So, you just have to live with it, and that's what's hard for a lot of witnesses, is because ex-witnesses come out. It's not like you just pay the price one time. It's for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life, as an ex-JW, still, the indoctrination still affects you, how you think of yourself, and it's very difficult. So any of you out there, that are going through that, try to be forgiving of yourself and don't carry the guilt, because we're all human. We're all suffering. We all can be vulnerable in our lives. And the most important thing is to forgive yourself, because if there's if there's a forgiving God, forgive it. Well, that's all I can say. Anyway, thank you for inquiring.
Yeah, it's not
Sending my
it.
love out to everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not if there's a forgiving God. There is a forgiving God. And I hope you always remember that, man. And I wanted to tell you that you sound so much like my mother. My mother was a devout Jehovah's Witness to the day she died. And they were told to shun me, of course. But my mother never shunned anyone. She actually lent money to people at the hall. And when she died, she had a book we went through. She had listed all the money that she gave the witnesses, and had, don't try to collect that. Don't try to collect that. Don't try to collect this. They need their money. She sounded so much like you. That's why I had to call in. God bless you for not shunning people like that. Yeah. So.
Well, one of the things that's hard on me now is a mother's love is a very special kind of love, and because I had children, I developed a special love for my children. And so my confusion now is like, if I compare the love of a mother or my love for my children, to God's love for his children. Well, the Watchtower children are abused and tormented
Yes.
and religiously traumatized, okay? And I was,
Yes.
as a young, I came in as a teenager. But
Mhm.
now that I'm out, I look at all the confusion in religion, and I feel that there's a lot of abuse going on in all different religions. And so
Yes.
that's where I question God's love. So I'm like, no,
Mhm.
this can't be that he's not loving enough to get rid of all the confusion. You know, if he's powerful, he should be able to get rid of all the confusion. But for me, I'm traumatized because I don't understand now even any God, and of course I don't believe that his name is Jehovah. You know, I did all the research on that, but a creator or a father creator in the heavens. So I'm having a lot of difficulty with understanding that he's a God of love because of what he's allowed, not only in Watchtower religion, but in lots of religions. He's allowed a lot of abuse and a lot of misunderstandings, confusions, and of course wars all through human history have been fought over religion. So there's where I have a lot of, I don't claim to know one way or the other. Yeah. But
that's a lot of what, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yes.
This is
I
Phil.
believe that it's a better way to live is with love. Otherwise, I don't think mankind could survive if nobody had any love ever. There has to be a purpose for people to enjoy their
May I
lives.
just say something? I'd like to say something, please, before we go to another person. This is Michael. I understand what you're saying about religion. Believe me, I believe the same thing that you do. A helpful thought for me, and it might help someone else out there. Jesus didn't call us to a religion. He called us unto himself. And if we learn the principles of Jesus, and we take those things in, just like you did with not shunning people, just like my mother did. My mother had the principles of Jesus. She didn't have the principles of the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. So that might be encouraging. Read Jesus' words. When we all come together in that facet of life, we're a powerful force that cannot be destroyed even by the devil. So if that helps, I'm just kicking it out there. So I wanted to tell you that.
Oh, well, that's very encouraging. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment on a lot of things that Christine was bringing up and what Michael said?
Emery, hold on 1 second. I just want to say one thing. Now, remember, you guys, you get your phone on. We're hearing dishes clacking in the background. That's
sorry, I gotta.
it's a microphone. We're going to pick up on all this sound in the background. So do me a favor. Do me a favor, please. If you want to speak,
Sorry, Rick.
It's okay,
Sorry,
Christine.
Rick.
If you just want to hit *6 to come in, and then when you leave, hit *6 again. And man, I'll tell you, that would make my job so much easier. I'm not complaining, just explaining. I do it myself sometimes too. We can do it. We can forget to do it, but please try to remember. Okay, go ahead, Emery.
Anne-Marie?
Thank you so much for that. Yes, please go ahead, Dave.
Just another thought. Really enjoying your program, especially on finance. And so to that subject, false religion, such as Catholics, they used to teach of purgatory, where your loved ones would suffer really, really bad pain till you got them out, and you got them out by buying windows for the church or donating money to the church. And then people started to realize what a scam that was. So they stopped it. Oh, the Watchtower is doing the same thing. They're having people believe that if you donate money to the Watchtower after you die, it's going to do good. It's going to buy another Bentley for somebody, in the governing body. It's really a horrible scam. And some of the people that are donating everything to the Watchtower, they think that they're getting going to get some kind of a blessing from Jehovah. Well, it's not going to happen. It's going to buy governing body member a big expensive home or something like that. That's where the money's going. It's a scam. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you so much, Dick, for bringing out that point. It's really true, because there's a subliminal but very powerful message that's inculcated in the Watchtower members that the more they do for the Watchtower, somehow that gains them brownie points with Jehovah God. Now, they would never admit to this directly, but we know one thing is true with Watchtower. They are so good at saying what they're saying without actually saying what they're saying. For example, they never say, come back to the Watchtower, or you left the Watchtower, or you're not faithful to the Watchtower. No, because that might make them wake up to, it's you left Jehovah. Come back to Jehovah. You're not being faithful to Jehovah. So when you do more for the organization, it's subliminally telling your soul and your heart, I'm pleasing to Jehovah. I'm honoring Jehovah with my valuable things. Who cares if you're shutting out your children? Who cares if you can't pay your bills or eat decent food because you're sending every penny to them? It is a scam. Thank you so much, Dick, for bringing it out. I remember Ken earlier was trying to speak. Ken, are you still there? Calling Ken. Okay, anybody want to comment? Anybody have a thought? Because I wanted to comment on what
Anne-Marie.
Christine said. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Anne-Marie, this is Phil. Oh, I got a couple comments that I would like to bring to contribute based on this conversation. I was born in, and when you live your life trying to please your parents, trying to please the elders, trying to keep yourself out of trouble, and you're raised the way they raised us, it's hard because you're told not to go to school, you're told to pioneer, you're always trying to please that way. And until you actually wake up and leave, and then not only wake up, but then get out from under the grasp of your parents that are trying to constantly guilt you. Once I woke up, I was still PMO for, a good 10 years while I was still in and out. But I was always guilty, or felt guilty, because I was disappointing Mom, who was extremely controlling. But as I woke up and started opening my eyes and really looking into what's going on with the open eyes, I found that the witnesses are, and I hate to generalize this too much, but I'll give you some background in a minute after I make this statement, but I find that the witnesses are some of the most dishonest people that I've ever met. Now, the reason I say this, and a little bit more background, since I've been fully out for the last 5 years, I've been working my way up the corporate ladder. I'm solidly making six figures. So what I'm about to tell you has got nothing to do about me being poor or about me being hurt, but my unbelieving grandfather was worth seven figures at the time. And he was a very strong opposer against the witnesses because he felt it split up the Catholic family that we had. And when my grandfather was reaching toward the end of his life, everybody knew how much they were supposed to get as far as the inheritance. It was going to be a healthy sum of money. But I was asked to move back to my hometown to help my father asked me to move back to my hometown to help him with my grandfather, his father, toward the end of his life because he was having trouble. And I made it happen. I still believe in family. I come up. Again, he was still a strong Catholic. My grandfather was. And all of a sudden, the amounts that everyone was supposed to receive started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I wasn't really putting two and two together. My grandfather passes. And then I find out right after my grandfather passes that my mother, the very strong pioneer of 30 years, was dying of pancreatic cancer. And sad, but all of a sudden my sister ends up buying a very nice house in the suburbs, and my dad is moving into the basement, and they made a whole basement apartment. When it was all said and done, the inheritance that the kids ended up getting, at least what I saw, was probably, honestly, 10 cents on the dollar from what we were expecting. And what I saw was, and what I'm about to say, I can't prove, but I know most of that went to the Watchtower, because my mom always talked about, well, we can give it to the Watchtower as a loan. You remember what they used to say, if you come into hard circumstances or hard times, you can request it back. And I know, because my mom was talking about that about the time my grandfather was really getting toward the end of his life. She was talking about that. Well, we'll take care of the Watchtower, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And I know your dad's going to be taken care of. And my mom passes, swearing to the last minute that she was going to survive Armageddon and see the new world, live to see the new world. And all that money's gone. And again, it's not about the money, but it's about the lack of integrity. It's about the lack of ethics that witnesses end up having, whether it be about CSA cases, whether it be about reporting CSA cases properly to the authorities, or how they take money from elderly witnesses, and the elderly witnesses are so snowballed they don't even see the cart before the horse to take care of their own families, who may have been struggling all their lives because they were raised uneducated or without upper education or further education. And it's just, I'm very bitter because, again, being raised a witness, being raised pioneering through the 90s and through the early 2000s as a pioneer, and beating people up with the reasoning book, and looking forward to arguing with people who may have been educated, what we thought were educated in religion and false religion, using air quotes there. But yet then when you really open your eyes and see really what the real story is, then what is there? You were kind of explaining that a little bit before I interjected. What is there if what you were raised with and what you, again, air quotes, knew was the truth? Really, you get what I'm saying? I understand where you get the people who are really anti-witnesses, and the various channels on YouTube that are always trying to cut apart the witnesses, and then you get the infighting between the various channels and the various people. It's very disconcerting. And I do enjoy listening to Six Screens. I do enjoy Rick's show. I love listening to your show too. There's a few people who I've contacted and actually had conversations with. But yeah, I mean, once I got out from under the witnesses, and I hate to say it, but once Mom finally passed and I didn't have that guilt, or I didn't feel that guilt, then I was able to really concentrate on my professional career, climbing the ladder extremely fast, and at the same time thinking back, saying, if I would have just gotten a couple of years of college and just concentrated on this, I wouldn't have had to struggle the way I did all the years that I did, clawing my way through the plants that I was working for.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying. Did somebody want to comment?
Yes, Anne-Marie, this is Michael. I don't know if you remember me or not, but we did a show together.
You.
Okay, how you doing, by the way?
I'm doing good. Glad to hear you. Thank you, Phil. Go ahead, Michael.
Phil, I hope you stay on and listen, because Anne-Marie, you and I were talking, and I was telling you about my bitterness that I had, and it took me about 10 years to finally come to the true Jesus. And you made a comment. Can you say that comment to Phil? Can you remember what you said about that? Because that was a beautiful comment you made.
Sir, my brother, I do not know what you're talking about. I say a lot of things.
Okay, so you said that people have to go, God calls us, he draws us back. And there's a certain period of time where you go by and go through that. Do you remember that now?
Yes, I believe that everybody has their own time. And I believe that personally, I believe that the Lord knows us personally. And he calls us when he knows it's the right time for us, the right circumstances. And he can manipulate things to help us to wake up. You know, I believe in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, where it says, if you just trust in God, you'll make your paths. That's plural. We have many different paths in our life. He will guide you. I believe that. And everybody has a story. And whatever caused them to wake up, they want to go and wake up everybody else, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to understand that you woke up not by yourself, just like you got drugged in to that cult and were taken over. Your mind was taken over. You didn't do that yourself, but you were set free. Anyway, please go ahead, Michael. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just agreeing with you. That was such a beautiful statement. And I go back to that radio show in the archives and listen to that, just what you said several times about that. That was so pretty. So don't forget that now, because you'll use that again and again.
Wow, thank you. You know, if I could just say this, I know we're starting to run short on time, but, you know, as a child, I was raised by a very spiritual mother, and she taught us about Jesus, and Jesus loved little children, and he made the butterflies and the birds and the flowers, and knocked on my mom's door when I was 5, and she got completely sucked in. And one day we come home from work, from school, from kindergarten. My brother and I were in the same kindergarten class. I'm 5 years old. My brother's 6. And we walk in the door, and all of a sudden she says, I have something important to tell you. God's name is Jehovah. It's not Jesus. You can't pray to Jesus anymore. No more birthday, no more Christmas, everything. Literally within 2 minutes, our whole life was taken away. So I am completely, 160-degree turnaround. I have to now do the Jehovah's Witness thing, and I'm raising it. And then at 12, when I'm in the Haight-Ashbury, the Summer of Love, 1967, San Francisco, I'm walking down the street really feeling love after I've been hearing about Armageddon this and all the wicked that, and paradise after all the dead bodies are cleaned up and all the dead bodies are going to have their eyeballs plucked out because they're wicked. And all of a sudden I'm like surrounded by love. And that's when I had a hint something's wrong. 13, I realized something's wrong with this organization. At 14, I said, screw this. I'm out of here. I don't care if my mom beats my butt every day. I'm not going back to another meeting. And stupid me got sucked back in, 6 years later, whatever, because it was January 1975, and these two sisters were sent by my mom to tell me to come back to my senses because Armageddon's coming and you're going to die and your kids are going to die if you don't come back to Jehovah. Stupid me. You know what? This sucking in, this cult is so powerful, especially when it's been ingrained in you. So you would think that during that whole time when those sisters were telling me I had to come back to Jehovah, my gut was saying, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, don't listen. Don't do it. And you know what the old programming tells you from a cult? That's Satan. Satan's trying to take over your mind. I mean, every sensible wake up alarm bell is, that's Satan. It's always the opposite. And it took me another 12 years of absolute misery and putting my children through hell. Then I finally came out. And I still believe for almost 14 more years after I left Watchtower that I was going to die, but I knew I couldn't go back because I couldn't stand it. I thought, you know what? I can't live that way. God's going to kill me. Oh, well. Anyway, thank you for some of
we're both out, okay? And we keep on spreading this message. You're helping people. So
yes.
Keep that up.
Rick, were you trying to say something? Who was that?
It was just somebody.
Yeah.
Are we okay?
Well, I wanted to know how the Summer of Love was. Did you drop a lot of ass?
This guy's good, isn't he?
I think that was a very rude comment. I wasn't dropping acid. I wasn't doing drugs. I was talking about the love that I felt. This wasn't about drugs. A lot of people don't get that. And I'm really feeling offended right now that you asked that question.
Well,
That wasn't
everybody,
a joke.
that's what they did at Haight-Ashbury. They dropped acid and smoked dope. Everybody knows
Not
that.
at that time. Not at that time. No, they did not. It was not about that at all. It was truly and honestly about love. Literally,
It was
people
spiritual.
they were hitchhiking from all over the United States to get away from the hypocrisy that they were dealing with, to come be together, to just be at peace. Now, yes, drugs did come into there, you're right, but that's why it was so special. It was all about real love and peace and kindness. I mean, I couldn't walk 2 steps without somebody asking me if I was okay, how are you, what's your name, are you hungry, do you have a place to stay? I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. That was one summer. Everything that happened after that, yes, there were drugs, but I didn't get involved in that. Thank you. Rick, how are we doing on time?
Let's go about another. We got a lot of people who want to call in, Anne Marie. So let's go about another 10 minutes, and I'll come back and cut in. Okay.
I thank you so much,
You
my
there?
brother. We have to be talking.
Hey,
Yes,
Anne
go
Marie.
ahead.
Anne-Marie.
Yes. Let's go one and then the other. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Which one? Okay, yeah, Ken here. My turn now?
Hi, Ken.
Oh. Okay, hey,
Yes,
how you
it
doing?
is Ken.
Yeah.
Hi, Ken.
Okay,
What's your
well-
comment?
Okay, well, I thank you for taking my call. All right, I had a little hard time getting in here between this end and the other end. I just wanted to let you know, first of all, that Jay, I got a hold of Jay here, the guy that used to have the program before you got it here, and he's doing okay. He's holding his own, but I'm not able to get a hold of him as much as I can. He doesn't have his own personal phone anymore, so I got to get a hold of him via the facility. And so I got a hold of him. Okay, I just wanted to comment too on some of this. We're talking tonight about the greed in the Watchtower Society. I just want to make about 2-3 comments on number one. If you was to go back in the 70s and everything like that, and most of the people didn't know it at the time, but the Watchtower Society was telling everybody in the 70s that the world was going to come to an end. Don't bother trying to accumulate any wealth or anything like that. And they were buying property up all over the country, especially around the state of New York City and Brooklyn. They were buying property left and right buying property. And we didn't know about that stuff until, say, when they started to sell it off. That's number one. And number two, you'd be surprised I know we hear a lot about pedophilia on there. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but you'd be surprised at the number of people that's hiding behind the green curtain, the pedophiles and so forth, that's contributing hundreds upon thousands of dollars to the Watchtower. So they're doing everything they can, to protect them. That's why a lot of these people are not being prosecuted. If this were just a poor man that was drawing Social Security or something like that, and he was doing that kind of stuff, he'd have been in jail a long time ago. And so it goes to show you the fraud, abuse, and corruption and so forth. And the Watchtower Society has always portrayed itself as it's a poor man's religion. They get their money from, people that throw the kids that throw their pennies in the contribution box, and the little old ladies that's retired and that throws their money in the contribution box and so forth. What a foul, filthy lie. They've accumulated millions of dollars, and a lot of that stuff was not done legally either, and so forth. So that goes to show you how foul the Watchtower Society is.
Well, thank you, Ken, so much. Yeah. Who's next, dear? Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, dear.
Which one? Yeah, go ahead. I don't know
Just
which
go.
one.
Time is short. Let's just talk.
Sure. Yeah, this is Thomas Hodson from Lawrence, Kansas here. My story is somewhat different, but it's based a lot on the same principle. I don't think I've ever shared it on the six screens, but I grew up in a kind of I guess you could call it kind of somewhat of a dysfunctional family. I don't know, our family seemed like it was pretty close, in grade school, high school, but then, see, I didn't want to go to college. I just didn't feel cut out for it. Mom and Dad acted really disappointed. And my brother Mike, he went to college, and of course they paid all his way and everything. And they really wanted me to go, and it just didn't appeal to me. I just went out and worked, and I didn't feel comfortable going to college. But they just really rolled the red carpet out to him. And gosh, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to sum it up. I mean, it's horrible the way it all ended up. Well, 2 months before Mom died, Mike went in there, my brother, and she had cancer, was on the bedridden, and he had everything completely deeded over to him. It's really awful. I mean, I figured up between that and all the other money that he got prior, it's probably over $1.5 million at least that I know of. But I didn't get one thing, guys. I mean, I didn't even get Dad's car. He even took that away. The car that my dad was driving, and he went to nursing home before he died, and he took a turn around. He said I could have it, but he ended up turning around and selling it. And he lied on the price of it and everything. I mean, it's a lot involved here. But come to find out, about 1.5 years ago, a few people stepped forward and told me about some other corruption I didn't know about. They had completely paid for Mike's veterinary clinic that he bought in 1985, and that must have been at least, even then, probably several $100,000, I imagine. And then they also told me that Dad confided in and told him before he died that he paid for all their college education of his kids too, as well as his. And his one son become a doctor, and then he married another doctor while he was in school, and then they're making the big dollars. They're making about $600,000 between the two of them, or a little more. And then his daughters are real high up in clinical psychology type work. They got a doctor's degree. I mean, he paid for all that. And because of this, Mike and his family, they've never had anything to do with us all these years. They don't treat us like Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's not too far from it. I mean, they never even invited us to his kid's wedding. He won't even give me his phone number or anything. I wrote him a letter and told him I forgive him. About a 70-page letter. I just wrote that over a month ago, and I said, I found all this stuff, and he tried to lie about it, and I told him why I didn't believe it, but he's never ever called or wrote back. I said I forgive him, and I hope he gets his life in order with God and gets saved, and all that. But I just kind of left the door open. It was a way of getting closer. But yeah, I mean, I know how it feels. My folks even kind of bullied me. They mistreated me. They treated him so different. So I mean, I got an idea how the witnesses are feeling because I got treated a whole lot like them. But I mean, that's just the way it is, But life goes on. Life's a lot better now.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for sharing.
Can I tell you a quick,
go ahead, dear.
thing?
Sure.
I used to be an insurance agent, and I was in the process of getting my securities license, which, you can sell stocks and your financial planning and all that. And I had made sure that if my dad died, my mom would be taken care of. And if my mom died, my dad would be taken care of. But there was an elder who was also an insurance agent. And he came to my mom's house before she had just gotten her insurance check from my dad dying. And I was trying to tell her, please don't do anything he says. You trusted me up until this point. Please keep trusting me. But he was an elder, and I was still a witness too, sort of. I was like a PMO. But anyway, he talked her and my disfellowship brother into investing with him. Because, even if the stocks didn't make any money, he got his commission right off the top. So that night, when he signed that form with them, that was a binding contract. And I tried to tell my mother and my brother, do not invest right now because there's about to be a collapse or, a downturn in stocks. And they said, well, you don't have your securities license yet. I said, I don't have it yet. but I'm about to sit for the exam to get it. So I already knew all the stuff about the stock market, but he just kept on and on and on. And well, before he walked out, my brother had invested every dime of his son's college fund, which his son was in a state university at that moment. And my brother only had a total of $30,000 to his name, and he invested every bit of it. And he taught my mom into investing about $50,000. And I begged and begged them, don't do it, please. Just trust me. I knew the stock market was about to crash. I knew it was. And I know.
Okay, Debbie, what does this have? Did this benefit the Watchtower? Is this something? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
No, I understand because he was an elder, and my dad had been an elder, so he thought since he was an elder, Mom would do what he said. But the next day, the stock market crashed, and they both lost every dime with him.
I'm so sorry that happened. We're out of time unless Rick says more. He gave us 10 more minutes, and our 10 minutes is up. Rick, how are we doing?
Well, we'll go with 5 more minutes because we do have an unusual amount of people calling into the program, Anne-Marie. So 5 more minutes, and I'm going to come in and we'll do it, okay?
Hey,
All
Anne-Marie.
right, just wanted to check in. Go ahead, dear.
Yeah, ma'am. I was going to say that, this is Jeff. Back when we were young and, the fear of Armageddon was just horrible. Horrible thought, and we just wanted to live, and we were told we'd die if we didn't stay in that organization. And another comment I want to make, as far as Watchtower, they always brag about not passing a plate and that contribution box, and that's all private. Well, you go to look at regular churches, and Watchtower is no different. Where they make their money is when people die, they give them houses. If they have savings, they give that to them. That's where they make their big money. And these people have invested in real estate that we don't even know of. It comes out a little by little, but they have assets all over the world. And all it is a greedy corporation disguised as a nasty, nasty cult. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, that is I'm sorry. Go ahead, dear. Does somebody want to comment?
Yeah, if I can add a comment.
Okay, go ahead, sweetie.
This is Eric from Rhode Island, living in Nashville, and
hi, Eric.
Hi, Anne-Marie. I was going to backpedal a little bit and talk about how it's a con job. There was a guy talking about Bentleys and stuff for their lifestyle, but what I think it really is, and it's just my opinion, he's entitled to his too, of course, but that's exactly what we're doing. The witnesses are funding their lifestyle. They have a meditation center that's being built. They have a movie studio. These guys are living their dreams. They don't cook. They don't clean. Maybe their wives or someone cooks in their personal condos. I know Stephen Lett has one. But everything is prepared for these people. They do not live in the real world at all whatsoever. And in a lot of ways, I feel like these guys are no different than the mafia. I mean, they are different. They're smarter in some ways. The mafia used violence. Now the mafia doesn't really exist as much anymore. They're still out there in New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Boston, Chicago, but they're politicians now. They change the way they do things. And that's what the governing body are. They're politicians. They will use blackmail on you and take your family away from you. They are a scam. They're snake oil salesmen. They are a con and a trick, and they are deceiving the nations. And I believe that if the Bible has any credibility, that these are the men that we were warned about. And I certainly, my life has been set on fire, and my wife as well from them. And they have a lot to answer for this. And to back up Dan Clark, he has a video where he says, "Can't you just say I'm sorry?" And it's like, fuck, why can't they just fucking say I'm sorry? You guys clearly made a mistake. Even the Catholic Pope, said a public apology to everybody for the abuse that happened. But that's the point I'm getting at. I'm ranting, and I know you got to move on.
No worries. Just let's calm the swearing down. I know I lose myself too.
I'm so sorry.
I appreciate your comment, but we are out of time. Just about a few seconds left. Do you want to have one or two sentences to say? Because we have about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I want to say that you and Chad, and if I'm missing Fran and the other guy, Joe, all you guys that do this channel, and Rick and his wife, you're doing God's work. This is the real work. And I do this too, in a way. I crash carts, and I pick their brains. I put up stickers where they set up their carts, and we all need to just come together and try to just expose it. It's not to hurt them. It's just that we're all doing an anti-witnessing work, if you will. But it's a good thing, and there's a lot of love in this channel, and I love you all.
Well, we love you too, and thank you for being part of the Six Screens family. I want to thank everyone who came in today. Our topic today was how the Watchtower scams and manipulates our older members of Watchtower out of their property and their jewelry and their stocks and bonds and bank accounts. I want to thank everyone for commenting, Dick, Constance, Ken. Also, we want to thank Rick and Randy, Christine, Michael, Phil, Thomas, Debbie, Jeff, and our last caller, Eric. Have a great day. Please listen in to JW World News coming up next. Rick?
Well, thank you, Anne-Marie. Well, we had an unusual amount of people coming in here tonight, calling into the program. I looked at the computer screens. They're full. Lots of people wanting to listen into the Six Screens. So thank you very much, Anne-Marie, for coming in and doing your program tonight. And as you say, all those people, too, that called in, it makes a big difference. And I just want to mention, too, folks, when you call in, you have to understand what that is doing. That is getting this people listening into this program right now that are wiggling their way loose from the Watchtower. And, they just heard Anne-Marie or me criticizing the Watchtower. Well, those guys are just a couple of old apostates that don't love the Watchtower anymore. But the more people you hear calling in to this program and voicing their opinion, that speaks volumes. It really does. I know one thing. If I was getting out of the Watchtower and I heard all these people calling in, I'd say, my goodness, there really is something wrong with this organization. It can't be that many people that are voicing their criticism about it. So call in if you can. Muster up the courage and come on in to the Six Screens. Well, we want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. And we're going to be going to JW World News. That's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about. So just stay right on this YouTube channel. Don't go anywhere. And we'll be right back in. And we're on Facebook as well, on a number of different platforms tonight. So stay with us. You'll see us somewhere on the internet. So don't go anywhere. Stay with the Six Screens tonight. So we're ending